Hello, MCU fans. Today we're going to be breaking down the big reveals from Secret Invasion, episode number 1. This will obviously be a very spoiler filled video, so make sure you've seen the episode first, but we'll be looking at things like timeline placement, who turned out to be a Skrull, and where things may be going from here. So without further ado, let's dive right in and see what we can find out. All right, so let's jump right into this timeline discussion. The episode tells us that it happens in present day. But what does that mean, right? What is present day in the MCU? Well, there was an article where Jonathan Schwartz, the VP of Production and Development at Marvel Studios, tells us it's present day. That's what we're calling it. So it exists along the timeline that the shows come out in. And then he says, so post She-Hulk, post Blip, right at the exact present day in the MCU. That's all I can say. Well, we know it's post Blip, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I'm not sure why he says post She-Hulk, unless that's because that's the last Disney Plus series we've gotten, which is probably why he's saying it. But it did make me wonder, is he saying there's something in She-Hulk that happens that ties into Secret Invasion? I kind of doubt that. I think he's probably just saying this is the next Disney Plus show. But it is kind of weird to say present day, because like here's the tail end of the Disney Plus timeline. What is present day, right, in here? So let's put some dates on here. This is when I believe each of these entries happens. Ms. Marvel in September of 2025 during her junior year. Thor Love and Thunder is a weird one. I think it occurs over several months, but it's being placed in October because I think that's when Korg is retelling the entire movie. So it's a very bizarre placement. I hope the timeline book explains that a bit more. But Werewolf by Night on Halloween, Guardians in Christmas, and Quantumania in July of 2026. So already moving into 2026. So notice, what is present day here? It could be anywhere from mid 2025 to mid 2026. And then throw in that Guardians, I believe it's not hit Disney Plus yet, but I believe it'll be April of 2026, somewhere in that time frame. So what is then present day? Well, my guess had been that Secret Invasion, it looked like they were wearing kind of fall/early winter clothing, so I was figuring it would be late 2025. So what did they think present day is? Well, they really meant present day, because notice, Secret Invasion is now the last thing on the list. I did not see that coming. I really thought it would be that we'd live in 2025 a little bit longer, maybe let real time, in the real world catch up with the MCU's time, but nope, they have powered ahead into 2026. Okay, whatever, right? I did not expect that. So when in 2026 does this seem to be happening? Well, one big question is it before or after the Marvels? Because we know that Nick Fury figures prominently in the Marvels. Well, according to Sam Jackson himself, right? Who can you trust more than that? He says the series, Secret Invasion, has to happen so that the Marvels can happen. All these things are connected in an interesting sort of way. Now, sometimes you can't really trust these quotes that people give, but I trust Sam Jackson. I think he knows his character, and he knows when things fit. So, okay, that means the Marvels is actually after Secret Invasion. Wild. So that one's going to be even later in 2026. Well, that does raise a question, because the post-credit scene in Ms. Marvel's show was basically a clip from the Marvels movie, as we now know. But in this clip, notice her mother is calling up to her saying, that doesn't sound like science to me, so that implies she is, in school. Well, in the series, she was in her junior year. Well, that means this post-credit scene has to be in her senior year? Because look at where this fits. So Ms. Marvel is in September of 2025, as we discussed earlier, and, it's off to the side there. Well, Secret Invasion is in 2026. Her junior year would end in June of 2026, so I guess this is in her senior year. Now, it's not unprecedented for Marvel to have a post-credit scene that happens well after the show or movie itself, but yeah, I did not see that coming, that we basically advanced her a full school year. So, okay, I guess we'll learn more in the Marvels, but it seems to be the case that she will now be a senior when we see that movie. All right, so when specifically in 2026 does this happen? Well, they give us a couple hints in the show. It is definitely 30 years after Captain Marvel, which is in June of 1995. So that puts us at least in June of 2025. But just because they say 30 years, sometimes we round things, right? We don't say 31 necessarily. He's just trying to make a big point that it's been a while. Same with Sam Jackson. Nick Fury later says he has 30 years of hands-on experience with the Skrulls. So you can see why a lot of people, though, thought 2025, right? 30 years. But just because they say that doesn't mean it has to be exactly 30 years. So then they also make it clear that this is well after the point when both Carol Danvers and Nick Fury have promised to find them a new planet. So both of them get thrown under the bus for not doing that. And it really does raise some questions as to why has it taken so long? I wonder if they'll go into that. I hope so. Because certainly after, let's say, Avengers Forward in 2012, the world's been crazy. You know, Thanos and Ultron and so much going on. But prior to 2012, I mean, he still had almost 20 years to find them a home and didn't. So hope they go into that. But anyway, the show is firmly setting itself at least 30 years after Captain Marvel. I think the more important line here is when Hill says to Fury, your lack of contact over the past few years sent a pretty clear message. Keep in mind that when you say a couple years, that means two. A couple is two. Few, therefore, kind of implies three or more. It doesn't have to, but it kind of implies three or more. So that would work because 2023 is the blip, and now we're talking 2026. So this line might be the biggest hint that we are farther down in the timeline than anybody expected. So when in 2026, though? Well, they kind of make that clear. They say, hey, this attack in Russia is going to be on Unity Day, and Unity Day is always on November 4th of each year. It's a cultural event in Russia. So, okay, that firmly sets us in November of 2026, assuming at least that Marvel respects when cultural events happen. There have been several cultural events in the MCU that have not occurred when they happen in the real world. The Eid celebration in Miss Marvel. The series is set in September, but that Eid takes place in June. Far From Home as the Festival of Lights, but that happens, which happens in October, November at time frame, and still they showed it happening in July. So, and then maybe Shang-Chi also messed up the Qingming Festival. I think so, but a lot of people don't. But the point is, Marvel doesn't seem to respect when cultural events happen. But let's assume that they got this one right. So, November. Also, we do see fall foliage on the ground. Notice the leaves. The trees have lost their leaves. There are some green trees throughout the episode, but a lot of them are evergreens that are always going to be green. So, okay, this seems to work really good. We'll go with November of 2026. I'm still shocked that they moved it so far into the future, but so be it. We are barreling into 2026. Also, I do have videos on every one of these placements in case you want more information of why I placed Thor where I did and Werewolf by Night where I did, etc. You can check out those videos if you're interested. But November 2026. All right, so on my circuit diagram where we've got everything, let's add in Secret Invasion. But I do have to note, a lot of people say, Phase 4 wasn't very connected. That looks really connected to me. I mean, I can barely get all this together because there's so many lines. I love it. We don't see the connections as strongly maybe as we did in some of the earlier phases, but they're all there. But anyway, so let's put on Secret Invasion, November 2026. We know it's Nick Fury's next appearance after Endgame, and actually that's really important. That comes up a lot. So we'll put that line in, and we'll put in a line for Ross there from Wakanda Forever. I will probably end up moving 2026 onto a new image because they are firmly in 2026. So we'll see. All right, so there you go. I will post this online as I always do, and there'll be a link in a pinned comment in case you want to go out and pull this down. Okay, so let's talk about the show. The opening theme, I thought is very interesting how they drastically shortened it. It's about 6 seconds long. I kind of like that. I mean, it's true that the theme, you really expect the full theme when you go to the movies. And so this is smart for them just to get right to the point for the series. Let me know what you think, if that affected you, but I thought that was interesting. Far more discussion, however, has been about the opening credits. In fact, I would argue the opening credits being by AI has gotten more discussion than even the episode itself. So very interesting. My take is I don't mind AI for art as long as there's still a human being who is putting in the information and is obviously changing it around when they're done. There's no way AI is going to come up with something perfect, so you still have a human being working on it. Sure, the AI is generating some of it, but let me know what you think about AI being used for art, just as a concept. But what seems to be for certain a problem is we have a writer's strike right now, and I have a big issue with AI replacing writers, like a huge issue. Please don't ever do that, Marvel. We have enough trouble with scripts being solid. We don't need AI generating them. And in the middle of a strike where writers are fighting for their livelihood, this didn't come off real well to have AI art. There's no way they knew. I'm not blaming Marvel, but I do think it might be better for them to replace all of this with a new opening so that it isn't taking away from the show itself, because the timing is very unfortunate. But as I was saying, I don't know that I have a big issue with AI art in general, because notice they talk about, they admit this was AI made, and in this article they say when we reached out to the AI vendors, keep in mind that means there are people who are doing this. Are they replacing other people that traditionally did graphic arts? Yes, they are, but they're being replaced by different people. As long as there's a human being driving it, ultimately, I don't have an issue. I just don't like AI running stuff without humans being involved. But anyway, it's very interesting. I don't want to talk any more about it because we could talk forever, for hours about this. But let me know in the comments your thoughts on two different things. Do you have an issue with AI generating art? And aside from that, how do you feel about the fact that this is happening during a writer's strike where writers literally may be losing their jobs because of AI? And should Marvel remove those opening credits and change it to something else for future episodes? All right, interesting stuff. But let's move to the episode itself, because boy, what a great episode it was. I really, really enjoyed it. I mean, they start right off the bat and we find out Ross is our first Skrull. He was on my list, but I had a lot of people on my list. But he was high on my list. And turned out, yep, he is a Skrull. What I thought was really interesting, though, is when Maria Hill goes to extract him and he calls down to her, he's listed as Agent Ross. That's wild, because if you remember in Wakanda Forever, Val pretty much fired him and he was on the run, hiding from the government. So now that we know this is in November 2026, Wakanda Forever is way back in like May of 2025, okay, there's been some time, a year and a half, so maybe something's happened with him, but I'm kind of interested in getting a little update on his status. Is he working for the government now, or is he secretly working for Hill and Fury? That would be interesting too. Obviously, they didn't know he was a Skrull. I'm just trying to figure out why they were working with him at all. So that's interesting. As for when he was replaced, I would think it would have to be after Black Panther at a minimum. He was so badly injured in that movie. At death's door, I would think when he passed out, he would revert back to Skrull form. Or maybe Shuri would have figured out he was a Skrull when she was working on him. Granted, they do simulate down to the DNA, so maybe Shuri didn't figure it out. But my guess is it's after the Black Panther movie. So it would therefore probably be sometime after he was on the run in Wakanda Forever, or he could have been a Skrull in Wakanda Forever because he was acting kind of strange. So anyway, I really do hope they give us a little more about when he was replaced. And is he now one of those bodies like we saw in the episode that he's locked away in a cellar somewhere and they're reading his mind? Interesting to know. Hope we learn more, but wow, was that incredible. I also loved the fact that we finally see someone fail, and I mean fail epically, on a roof jump. You know, every time in the movies you see people roof jumping, they'd make these ridiculous jumps that no one should be able to make. Oh no, he didn't make the jump. It ended very poorly. And it was just a really chilling way to start the series, with learning that someone we've known for quite a while, way back to Civil War, it has been a Skrull at some point. So let me know your thoughts. When do you think Ross was replaced as a Skrull, and will we find out that his real body has been captured and kept by the Skrulls in their hideout? All right, so Fury, obviously one of the main characters. Let's talk a lot about Fury. I loved his entrance, very otherworldly, kind of set the whole stage for the show. And of course, we see a very different Nick Fury. Right off the bat, no eye patch, seemingly more vulnerable. Obviously, he seems out of shape. He wasn't able to walk real well on Earth gravity because he's been in space so long. Just you do wonder, is some of this an act, though? You know how Fury always wants to keep people guessing. Is he acting like he's older and feeble, and he's going to turn out that is not the case? I'm going to bet so, but I tell you, certainly he seems a little out of it. And it's interesting because everybody talks about how the blip fundamentally changed him. 3 different times, Talos tells him, after the blip, you were different. And Agent Falsworth says, MI6 agent Falsworth says, I think the Thanos snap changed you. And then Hill tells him, you were never the same after the blip. And you can just see the look on his face. I mean, being told this over and over again has to hurt. And of course, certainly he would be affected by the blip. He lost half the Avengers, the team that he formed to protect the Earth. He lost Stark, he lost Natasha, and seemingly Rogers. We don't know if he's dead or if he's on the moon, but still, the Avengers probably aren't even meeting as a team anymore. So that has to affect him. Also, I think this kind of gives us the indication that he really was blipped. I had a theory that this was maybe Talos or somebody else, but he has a flashback to this event, like it was traumatic. So I think they kind of answered the question of how long has Talos been Fury. I don't think Talos was Fury prior to this scene here. I think this was really Fury. He was really blipped, and that might mean he's always been Fury. There were the theories in Age of Ultron. Was it Fury in Age of Ultron or not? Maybe they're going to answer that, but I kind of think this was our big indicator of no, he's been Fury until after this happened. And we know that Fury showed up at at Tony's funeral. And Nick Fury showed up at Tony's funeral because that's what they're telling us in this article, John Watts. So I think that was his last appearance, and then boom, he was gone. I mean, we learn in the episode he's been off-world working on Saber. So I think that's when Talos took over, and prior to that he's always been Fury. So let me know what you think, if this kind of answers that question or not. So during Far From Home, we saw inside the Saber station, and notice the Skrulls. I'm wondering if they're going to bring this up, because there are Skrulls working on the space station. At some point, is Fury going to be worried that some of these may be bad? It'd be interesting to see if they go. I don't think so. I think that we're going to stay on Earth the whole time. But I wonder if in the Marvels he's going to have to deal with the fact that some of these may be Skrulls that aren't too happy. They don't have a home world. But they like the fact, I think, that they're doing something productive up in Saber. But interesting sub point here with the Skrulls on the station that I do hope gets addressed at some point. But then obviously we saw the outside of the Saber station during the Marvels trailer. And it's pretty impressive, pretty impressive. So that's where Fury has been this whole time, because he was just so beat up and dejected after the blip. So again, it's not real clear how it's going to tie in the series into the Marvels, but we do know he's going to have the eye patch back again, and according to Sam Jackson, this happens after the series, so I can't wait to see how that all ties together. Now, we do learn a little bit more about Saber when we meet the President Ritson, and Rhodey with a small but important appearance in this episode. Notice they talk about it being the most complex aerospace defense system in the history of mankind. So that's pretty important. And notice also, by the way, he's Agent Fury. I thought that was interesting. He's not Director Fury. He's not director of anything. He's just an agent. But he's helping build that defense system, which, honestly speaking, had that existed, maybe Thanos couldn't have done what he did. If they'd had the ability to fight him, now he might have just wiped out the space station. But still, having that to protect Earth from otherworldly threats is really smart. And of course, we know this is Ritson. I don't think they give his name in the episode. I don't believe so. But remember, in Wakanda Forever, we got this little ticker down below. This is President Ritson signed trade pact with New Asgard. So we know Ritson has been president at least since Wakanda Forever. It's unclear when he went into office. Hopefully, we'll get a little more information on that. But it is interesting to note how Rhodey and Ritson are a little worried about both Fury and now Agent Hill, because neither one of them have been talking to them and to Rhodey, and instead have been sending encrypted messages to each other. It's also worth noting, I think it's interesting how they frame. We see several president portraits throughout the episode, but notice we've got Nixon and Reagan there. I'm betting Ritson is a Republican, and not to get into politics, but often Republicans could be more hawkish, and certainly Ritson is very hawkish. He wanted to attack Wakanda in Wakanda Forever. So yeah, I'm betting he's a Republican. But regardless, they say the fact that, hey, these guys are AWOL, basically. Hill and Fury are AWOL. So and Ritson says deal with it to Rhodey. So it's going to be very interesting when we see Rhodey reappear. All right, so let's talk about Talos. I find it interesting that he is still keeping the skin he adopted back in Captain Marvel. That's fine that he can't, it was the director back then, Keller, but it's just kind of interesting that he's still keeping that skin. Of course, I'm glad because I love Ben Mendelsohn. Good to see him. But But that's kind of interesting. And you wonder if he might want to change it since now he's been kicked off the Skrull Council. They all know what he looks like, so maybe he needs to change his look. But we also learn that Skrulls are immune to radioactivity. This plays a role a lot in this episode, but I think maybe in the entire series, because number one, they can hide out in old dismantled nuclear plants in Russia because the radiation doesn't bother them. But also notice they're trying to get a war between Russia and America, which of course would be a nuclear war, I guess presumably as long as they weren't physically bombed, the radiation wouldn't affect them after the fact. So they really don't care if we have a scorched earth afterwards. Interesting. Very interesting. So that's I don't know if that's new from the comics or not, but certainly it's a key element in the series. Now, Talos, we also learn, has lived a long time, meaning Skrulls live a long time. He's 136 years old, and from human terms, that would be 40. So he's only middle-aged. It's just wild. And of course, he asks Fury, "What did you do for your middle-age crisis? What was your gift?" And best line of the series, he says, "The Avengers." That was great. In fact, it's interesting. I've heard some people saying that there's not as much humor in this series. I thought it's perfect. What humor we get is very well done. And, some people complain there's too much humor in other things. And now when there's less, they complain. So whatever. I thought the humor was fine. And let me know what you think in the comments if you felt that there should have been more. But I thought it was perfect. All right, so we do learn that Talos was removed from the Skrull Council, and of course Gravik has now taken his place, and he's basically been pushed into exile, which is wild. But he still wants to avoid hurting his fellow Skrulls. That was a really powerful scene when he had told Fury, "No, don't kill him. I've got this under control." When they're fighting one of the bad Skrulls, and it really affected him. You could tell it really affected him. So he's very torn. It'd be interesting to see what he does throughout the series. Will he eventually side with the exiled Skrulls? I find that hard to believe, but he certainly doesn't want them harmed or killed. So that's interesting. We also learn that Soren passed away. That is really sad. His wife, because he talks about her in past tense here at this scene, and then we do slowly learn, yeah, she's died. Of course, you remember Soren. She was with him in Far From Home, and obviously was with him in the Captain Marvel movie. And of course, she's been imitating Maria Hill, which is wild to think that both Soren and Maria Hill ultimately die, either on screen or off screen in Soren's case. But that's kind of wild because there were some theories maybe there wasn't a real Maria Hill, that she'd always been Soren. That was debunked, obviously, by this first episode, but to have them both die anyway, ooh, that's powerful. That's powerful. So Gaia is his daughter, is Talos' daughter. I'm saying Talos. It's Talos. Sorry, Talos' daughter. I always thought it was Talos. I don't know why. Anyway, Talos' daughter is Gaia. And of course, we saw her in the Captain Marvel movie as a little girl, and now she's grown up. And Emilia Clarke is fantastic in this series. In fact, the two of them together are amazing. Very, very strong emotional scenes together. Great stuff. And of course, Talos is the one that breaks the news to Gaia that Soren is dead, and she wants to know how. And he explains, "Hey, why don't you ask the people you work for?" So Gravik seems to have killed Soren, probably because he's mad at Talos for not being part of their rebellion. So that's really powerful. So we'll see whether Gaia ultimately turns away from the resistance team and joins with Fury and Talos. But right now, she tricks him and says she marks those bags, as you remember in the episode. And of course, that was a trick. So she's still working for sure with Gravik for now. We learned some things about the warriors, if you will. The warrior Skrulls keep their human forms because, as she says, the longer we're attached to our shells, the less likely we can be identified by humans and Skrulls alike. But the reason I bring this up is it makes sense, right? In universe, that makes sense. But the nice real-life ramification of this is a lot less makeup. A lot less makeup, and we get to see our main stars instead of seeing them as Skrulls. So very clever writing. Kudos. Very budgetary friendly. I like that. I like it a lot. All right, so the Skrulls refer to the humans that they've turned into, that they're simulating, as their shells. I think that's great. And they hook them up to this brainwave machine. You might remember in Captain Marvel, Carol Danvers said they can only get your short-term memories. They cannot get access to your long-term memories simply by simming you. However, remember in the movie, they used this basically the same device to pull long-term memories from Carol Danvers. And it was kind of faulty. It was shaky. It wasn't perfect. So maybe they've perfected the technology, or maybe they're using the exact same technology. But I thought that was kind of cool. I wondered if that was how they were going to get their memories. Now, also, throughout the show, they give us hints of who might be Skrulls. And this was, as long as you watch closely, and this was interesting. So this dude who just is up against the machine, they just pass by, they don't even mention him. And here's another shot of him after Gaia walks past him. He's the same dude that was the art dealer that they end up, that Talos and Fury end up fighting, and Fury kills. Notice he's even wearing the same suit. That's wild. So they gave you a hint that this guy was a Skrull if you paid attention. Pretty cool. All right, so Gravik, I've mentioned him a couple of times. He's the extremist resistance leader, and boy, that dude, he is hardcore. What is really interesting is it certainly seems like Fury has a history with him, because twice, maybe even 3 times in that final scene, he had a chance to take him out, and he didn't. He hesitated. Old Fury would have drew that gun and boom, dead. But no, he hesitated and waited. And we get some hints throughout the episode that there is a past between Gravik and Fury. Agent Falsworth says, "You know the rebel leader personally, don't you? You feel responsible?" So what does that mean? What are your theories on how they're tied together? I heard a crazy theory that Gravik was his son. We are going to meet his wife, but is his wife a Skrull? Did Fury marry a Skrull and have a Skrull son? I don't know. That seems pretty out there, but it does certainly seem like there is some tie between Fury and Gravik, and that Fury maybe is going a little soft on him. But so, speaking of Agent Falsworth, this is the first I've mentioned her, so real quickly, let's discuss the fact that she works for MI6, obviously British Secret Service, but it's strongly believed that she is the daughter of James Montgomery Falsworth, who showed up in Captain America: The First Avenger. They haven't really said that in the series, but it's been implied elsewhere, so yeah, that's pretty cool. A nice tie to a very early movie in the MCU. But also, I love her jokes. She's very serious, but also has a good stinging sense of humor. And when she tells Fury that I haven't forgiven you for destroying my expensive flat, and he responds, "You mean city?" Of course, they're talking about, Far From Home and all of the damage caused during that. And she's kind of blaming him for that. Maybe in a way blaming him because it wasn't him. It was instead Talos pretending to be him and doing a pretty poor job of it, as you recall. So I thought that was kind of clever. Again, there's humor in this series. Well placed, well done humor. All right, so I mentioned earlier that we saw some hints at Skrulls throughout the episodes. So tie that in with the fact that Gravik and Fury seem to have some type of relationship. It seems very clear that Gravik was stalking Fury and using his different shells, if you will, to just kind of follow him throughout the episode. So remember in the finale, in the end of the episode, we see this little girl with the ball, and eventually will turn into Gravik. You see Fury there in the far left corner. Well, that little girl had showed up earlier. You notice the exact same ball even, and different outfit, but you can see that is her. I'm betting that was Gravik, disguised as her, using her shell, and just kind of messing with Fury. We see it again. This one's really interesting. This dude was the one that showed up in the bar when Fury was in the bar. And I think this was Gravik directly messing with Fury, because he said to him, "No matter how long you look in the mirror, you'll never be the man you once were." And I remember thinking, what a weird thing for a rando in the bar to say to Fury. Even Fury turns around and he's like, What are you saying, comrade? So, yeah, I'm betting that was Gravik just messing with Fury, showing him I could have killed you multiple times, and I didn't. I know where you're at. I literally am following you, and I'm baiting you. And then finally, the girl that is the third shell that Gravik uses before he turns into himself. That's the girl here that was making out there by the riverside. And I remember when I thought it was weird how she was staring at him, but they'd kind of set the scene up by saying, hey, a black man at night walking around Russia, you're really going to stand out. So I kind of thought this was a little bit of racism, potentially. No, I'm betting money that was Gravik. just staring at him. How fascinating. But yeah, you see what I mean, and I mentioned it earlier, that they give you hints when there are Skrulls versus humans, if you're paying close enough attention, and it adds to the eeriness of the show. Anyone you see could be a Skrull. Wild stuff. Well, so eventually, after these 3 shells, Gravik turns back into himself, and we see just how far he's willing to go when, boom, he sets off the bomb, and I mean it, major bomb. Now, we've seen in later episodes from the trailers that Rhodey is going to tell Fury, "You're the most wanted man on the planet." Is he somehow going to be framed for this? Because Gravik does also turn into Fury a couple times. So that'll be interesting to see if this is what leads to him getting in trouble with the government, or if it's even something worse. I'm wondering if they go after and kill the president, President Ritson, and frame Fury for that, because that would make him the most wanted man on the planet if he killed the president of the United States. So, wow, crazy. And then we have to talk about Hill. Oh, I love Maria Hill. Always been one of my favorite characters. She doesn't get to do a lot, but she's always very important whenever she shows up. And she's been around since Avengers, since 2012. Fantastic character. I love the actress too. Colby Smulders is a fantastic actress. It's very interesting how she was talking to him in what I guess now is their last conversation together. When she says, "You're not ready for this, Fury. Check your footing, otherwise someone's going to get hurt." Wow. She did not know she was talking about herself, did she? Fury's going to remember this, though. He's going to remember her saying that. This is literally the last line she says to him before she dies. I'm sure they had other discussions that we don't see, off screen, but I'm saying this is the last that we saw. He's going to remember that the fact that he didn't take out Gravik when he could have ends up resulting in Hill dying. Wow. So is it the last we'll see of her? My opinion, yes. Yes, for multiple reasons. Number one, Fury walks away from her because she's dead. And he believed, at least, she was dead. There's no way he would walk away from Hill unless there was nothing he could do to save her, and unless the life was gone from her. Number two, they held on the scene long enough so that if Hill had been a Skrull, she would have turned back. I mean, they don't turn back like instantly when they're killed. We saw that earlier, that it took a few seconds, but they do turn back. We saw that with the art dealer. So I think they intentionally held on that scene, not only for the emotion of it, but also to show us she's dead. She's dead. We've lost Hill. Let me know what you think. Do you think she's somehow going to come back? But I think the biggest reason she won't is it would just ruin this emotional moment. I mean, I want her back. If they bring her back, I won't complain, but I think it would ruin the amazing moment and the tension and the drama that this creates for the series. I mean, that's big stakes when you kill off a character that's been around since 2012. Wow. So who else may die? Who else is going to be on the list? Craziness. All right, so I loved this episode. And what I really like is this is starting, or continuing, I should say, really, the street-level hero and political espionage storylines. So across the top there, I think, are all the different series or movies that are going to tie into this overall street-level political stuff. You've got Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Far From Home, Eternals because of Tiamat's body only. Obviously, that's very much a cosmic story, but the result of Tiamat, that's going to come into it. Hawkeye, Wakanda Forever, and then She-Hulk because of all the different Hulk storylines we're going to see. So look at what's going on here. We got Secret Invasion coming out now. We got Echo, which is going to pick up right after Hawkeye. We'll have both Daredevil and Kingpin in it, leading into Daredevil Born Again. Then Captain America New World Order, which I believe is going to directly pick up from Secret Invasion, and I believe the death of Ritson, which will lead to Ross becoming president. And Captain America New World Order is going to pick up from the Hulk storylines from She-Hulk. I still bet we're going to get a Sentry special presentation. I think it's now moved to 2024, but there's just no reason that while they're filming Thunderbolts, they wouldn't give us an introduction to Sentry, who is supposedly one of the big bads in Thunderbolts. And in either Captain America New World Order or Thunderbolts, I can't tell which for sure, that's when they're going to be checking out Tiamat's body, because his body supposedly has turned into adamantium, a very valuable metal. So that storyline continues on. I think Spider-Man 4 is going to continue on. I'm betting Daredevil is going to be the guest star. I sure hope so. And they're going to fight Kingpin. That would be amazing if so. And then finally, Armor Wars. That will pick up Rhodey's storyline after Secret Invasion and the theft of Stark's technology. So, I mean, that's 8 entries, shows, or movies that are going to deal with the street level political storyline. I love it. And the end result is, I think, the MCU version of the Dark Reign comics. You've got Sharon Carter, who's Broken Bad, obviously. You've got Val. You've got, I think, soon-to-be President Ross. He's sketchy, obviously. Kingpin, supposedly he's going to become mayor or run for mayor of New York. So all of them in powerful positions. You got the Thunderbolts. So now literally Val runs a team that will help do her bidding. And I think Damage Control, there's something wrong with Damage Control. I really do think Deaver is going to turn out to be a Skrull, but you have to wonder whether Damage Control is working for the government and if they've broken bad. And of course, in the end, I think we're going to get a Red Hulk. So President Red Hulk. So yeah, look at all this building. I'm really, really excited for this storyline and where it's going to be going. It's going to be fantastic. So let me know what you think. Are you excited for how these street level heroes are all forming this really big interweaving storyline? So there you go. That is my breakdown of Secret Invasion episode number 1. As always, I will mention our Discord server. Here we are arguing about whether or not the AI, or discussing, sorry, not arguing, but discussing whether the AI was a bad idea or not. Very different opinions on that. It was great to have people chatting about that. I will leave a pinned comment where you can join the Discord server if you'd like, and you can share in the conversation. And also, if you don't mind, like this video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can check out more content, and we can all continue to enjoy the ever-growing, ever-changing Marvel Cinematic Universe.